Hello everyone, this is a American contractor. I'm going to talk about a subject here about Jade Helm 15. Now Jade Helm 15, as you know from Thomas Meade, the military contractor that talked about, gave the briefing to the city council people, county commissioners, or whatever. He talked about the realistic military training, RMT. Well, I'm going to carry it a little bit further and tell you what RMT is according to the Department of Defense, and hopefully get a better picture of what's going on here. So hopefully it won't take a long video, and this won't be a long video, hopefully. And I'm going to go through all these different points, and so let's get started. This is a Department of Defense instruction document. You see the logo over here. It's dated March 18th, 2013. There was a change to it effective May 13th, 2014. So it's about a year-old document. And like I said, the subject here is realistic military training, RMT, off federal real property. And this goes into all the different who's in charge of this, who's responsible for what the responsibilities are of different commands in the military. Here's the purpose. Just gives the regulations, what gives them the authority, and who this applies to. All military departments, Office of Chairman, Joint Chiefs, all these entities right here in the military, all DOD forces, including General Purpose Forces and the Special Operations Forces, SOF, the soft guys, okay? Training off federal property in the United States or its territories, including ground force operating urban or remote environments. So you see Marines and the Army training in these different cities. These are RMT events. That's what they're called. Realistic military training. RMT events, and there's different categories for them. So this is the rules and regulations they follow. Aviation forces, even the aircraft, if they're training off post, off the, when I say post, I'm talking about the Army post, but military base for you civilians out there. And, this all falls in this guideline. And who does not apply to? If they're training at a private, commercial, state, or local facility that has been specifically developed, established, or operated for the purpose of training such as that which will occur during the proposed event. Like Fort A.P. Hill, that would be this type of it falls under this right here. Individual education or training activities, unmanned aircraft system operations in accordance with this, UAS, aviation forces, training over or on or under the ocean, training outside the United States or its territories, although this instruction can be used as planning framework for such training. And it goes into their policies. If you bear with me, I'm going to get to the good stuff here. So I'm just showing you what this document's all about. It's a very short document. It's 21 pages. And let's go into, and this is signed by Jessica L. Wright, Acting Under Secretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness. Not sure if she's still there, but it doesn't matter. She wrote this and it's still in effect. Here's a table of contents. And we'll just continue on scrolling down here. It does get interesting. There's a lot of verbiage. There's the different commands. NORTHCOM, US SOCOM, US NORTHCOM, US PACOM, which is the Pacific. Okay, background. It just tells you the little background, what's going on by its nature of training federal property, okay? Gives you the legal guidelines and everything. And I'm highlighted different spots here. The DOD will deepen collaboration with civilian law enforcement agencies to maximize military training opportunities that concurrently and legally support law enforcement and homeland security requirements. Such mutually beneficial dual effect training will meet both military training requirements and the DOD role in support of law enforcement agencies in the performance of law enforcement missions. This goes to show you that the RMT, realistic military training, They do collaboration, right here, deepen collaboration with civilian law enforcement agencies to maximize military training opportunities. So when the colonel in the briefing, Mark Lastoria, says, no, we're not associated with law enforcement. Law enforcement is law enforcement, we're military. Well, according to their directive here, they have a deepened collaboration with civilian law enforcement agencies. I'm going to get to some more parts about it too. General procedures is the different categories. They never said what Jade Helm 15 is all about as far as the categories 1, 2, or 3, but I believe it's a 3 because of the SOF commander, U.S. SOCOM. That's what I think. It's a category 3, which is high risk RMT operation. Risk assessment factors must be included in the assessments are. Now, they talked about the risk assessments that they have to do at each site. And this goes down goes line by line what they have to do their risk assessments on. The first one's exposure and interaction with civilian population. Physical presence and activity, noise levels, radio frequency interference. Are they going, they're going to be briefed and they're going to write all this stuff down. Are they going to start using, their jammers, jam cell phone, jam radios, by, law enforcement radios, or a construction site using their radios? Will they interfere with them radios? This is all risk assessment, okay? So if they're operating in an area, they're going to see if the military's communications are going to interfere with anything. Noise levels. If they bring in aircraft, if they bring in, whatever, a bunch of trucks, what's the noise level going to be? Their physical presence. How many troops are you going to have operating? And their activity, physical presence and activity. Nature of operations, live fire. Now, I already did a video on the operations they're going to do in Mississippi, in Biloxi, the city of Biloxi. Now, if you haven't watched that video, go ahead and watch it on my YouTube channel. They're going to do a live fire exercise there. So in their risk assessment, they wrote down that they're going to be doing a live fire. This risk assessment is also given to the city council people. Close quarter battle training, night operations, tactics, techniques, and procedures. These are your TTPs. And sensitivity to terrain, included facilities, environmental, schools, hospitals, nuclear installations. Terms of the use of objective facility, the liability, the cleanup and repair. If they go in there, what's the liability? If someone can get hurt, who's responsible? Or about the cleanup, they damage anything, they accidentally set something on fire. If they have to repair things, who's being responsible, which is the military. It says it right here. They are responsible for all that. Nature of DOD presence, weaponry, vehicles, what type of uniforms to be wearing, movements, all this stuff's got to be written down, and everybody's got to be on the same page. You can't have people walking around with a bunch of weapons, but they're not part of the exercise. Like the colonel said in that, Colonel Mark Lastoria said in his briefing that all the participants will be wearing a green band. No, my fault, not a green band, an orange band, I think he said. Orange. Maybe that wasn't green. I think it was orange, he said. And so if they wear an orange band on their arm, that they are a participant in this exercise. Let's see, presence, nature, and impact of fixed and rotary wing aircraft operations, including unmanned aerial systems. That's your UAS systems. Your drones. That's what it is. Presence, interaction, and applied capabilities of non-DOD agencies, law enforcement, Department of Energy, Department of Justice. Degree of local, state, and federal political and public interest. Nature of PA, public affairs activities. Is it active or passive, and is it present? Availability and response time for DOD and non-DOD emergency services. So I hope everybody understands. This is I just want to make sure everything's clear on this. Make sure I'm clear on when I'm presenting this. The risk assessment factors that must be included in the assessments are, and this is all written down. This has to be written. So they're going to go line by line and what is the danger, what is the liability, what's the cleanup, what kind of weapons are going to be having at this site, like Bastrop. They're going to be operating in Bastrop. So this is our guys, and this is what they're going to be doing. This is the risk assessment. Are they going to get hurt? What materials do we need? They have every contingency plan in this risk assessment that they have to do. Now, just more verbiage. All RMT, realistic military training, must be in compliance with all applicable laws and regulations, including DOD issuances. Intelligence training activities conducted as part of an RMT event must be in accordance with this directive right here, DOD 5240.1-R, reference I. For interagency exercises in which DOD may not be the lead element coordinating with civil authorities, the lead DOD component will leverage ongoing coordination efforts being conducted by the lead U.S. government element. For example, Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, DHS, Department of Homeland Security, DOE, Department of Energy, to ensure that DOD requirements provided in this instructions are met. So the interagency exercises, which we know that Jade Helm 15 is, because the Thomas Meade said that the FBI and the DEA will be involved, and they'll be checking people at the airport in Arizona. But we also know that Department of Homeland Security is going to be involved in Department of Energy because it's listed right here. So this is a given. This is concrete information. The FBI, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Energy are involved. Coordination with civilian officials. Now, when they do an RMT training, they have to inform the local officials. They have to get permission from them. Right here, in determining the appropriate civil authorities for coordination, local government officials, the mayor, the city manager, county commissioner, or tribal leaders, if they're on a federal land, and local and federal law enforcement agencies will be consulted. So sheriff's departments, police departments, they know what's going on. They've been briefed. And it says here, how I know this, because it says it right here that they are briefed. So if you talk to your police chief, your sheriff's office, they know what's going on. I mean, if they're not going on, then they need to be calling up the DOD, calling up the Department of Army and say, look, in your directive, it says that we should be consulted. So where's my consultation if I haven't been given the information? Details is to the maximum extent possible, local civilian officials will be briefed in person on the training concept. Issues to be addressed with civilian officials will include subject to OPSEC constraints. And OPSEC, for you civilians out there, is called operational security. It's kind of like, sensitive information, like, how do military units operate? Sometimes that'll be falling under OPSEC, flight patterns, flight times, stuff like that. That's OPSEC. Details on specific proposed training activities, live fire, aviation. What this is saying here is that the local officials, the sheriffs, the police, they're going to get details of the specific proposed training activity, such as live fire, aviation, close quarter battle training, day or night operations, anticipated noise, radio frequency interference, and anticipated direct interaction with civilian population. So they're going to be briefed. This is what we're going to be doing, like in Alabama. Like in Mississippi, Biloxi. We're going to do that live fire exercise. If you haven't watched that video that I did, go ahead and watch it. They're going to be doing a live fire exercise at the casino or at the warehouse. They're not really sure. It doesn't say in their risk assessment, in their proposal, in their agreement. So let's go on here. Precautions to ensure public or participant safety, proposed public or resident notifications, public support, medical and fire. They have to make sure that everybody's going to be safe. They have to make sure that medical emergency services are going to be available. I mean, the military has their own medics. They have their own doctors, obviously, but everybody knows that. But sometimes you really need to make sure that civilian support on the ground at the site is available also. What is available if you're in the middle of nowhere in Bastrop County? So you have to inform medical services just in case something was to happen. Hospitals, where the hospital is located. What type of hospital are they? Are they trauma treatment hospital? They do gunshot wounds or whatever. That's what you need to know. It's information that the military would need to know. State government representatives or staffs. This is very important too. State government representatives or staffs, the U.S. congressional representatives or staff in whose district the training is taking place, and the U.S. senators or their staff in whose state the training is taking place will be advised of proposed Category 3 training events and provided information to the extent requested. So see how the caveat here is? Extent requested. So if the U.S. Senator, U.S. Representatives, state doesn't request any kind of information, they're not going to send them this information. They have to do their risk assessment. They have to give them their report if they request it. But the caveat is, if it's requested, if they don't request it, they're not going to send him nothing. All right. So hopefully, state governments watching this video sees this requirement. Say, hey, I need to request that document. I need to see what Jade Helm is in my county or in my district or in my state or whatever. It says it right here. It says they have to. Well, I shouldn't say they have to, but they can do anything they want. But in their documents, it says here that if I'm requested, then they're going to give me some information. It says here, written approval or concurrence from these officials is not preconditioned to the exercise execution. Just because it's written down doesn't mean it's going to happen. All right. Appropriate real property agreements for each training site will be executed with private property owners or government property managers. So every property agreement, real property agreements will have to be delivered, signed, and agreed upon for each training site for private landowners and most likely public landowner, for the mayor and the county officials and stuff like that. Copies of the signed agreements must be provided, if requested, to the senior local civilian officials responsible for the affected civilian environment. I have not seen yet on the internet, what's Bastrop's signed agreement? Where is it? How come it's not on Post-it? It's supposed to be a public document. I mean, they're trying to do operations in their county. Why hasn't the county commissioner, the mayor, the judge, whoever, I don't know how they're set up over there, but how come the mayor, the county officials haven't said, hey, we want our signed agreements, and then provide it and then start posting it on the internet so the whole public can see it, what's going on? And if requested, to state and federal authorities, same thing. If the state governments wants a copy of the signed agreements, where are they? For copies of an agreement with private landowners requested by civil authorities, information considered private may be redacted by the component legal representative at the request of the landowner. Now that makes sense. If I was a private landowner, I don't want my information out there, so I'm sure the legal department would redact, black out my name and information. That's understandable. A record of coordination activities will be maintained for each RMT event by the approving authority. Now, we already know that Jade Helm events will be yearly. Now, here's the different categories. For Category 3 RMT events, a summary letter will be provided to the senior local civilian official no later than 2 days prior to the event that confirms the details of the event and lists the names of all civilian officials and organizations that have been briefed or coordinated on plans for the training event. This is pretty important. So 2 days before July 15th, so we'll say July 13th, they're going to get the summary letter provided to the senior local official of that county. And they're going to give up everybody who's involved, the names of the civilian officials, organizations have been briefed or coordinated on plans for the training event. It says it right there, folks. So on July 13th, I hope somebody in Texas saying, hey, where's that document? Where's that summary letter? All right, to the extent practicable and consistent with OPSEC, operational security and safety considerations, recommendations of civilian officials regarding community notification and outreach will be followed. And I highlighted this. Community notification and outreach may include mailings, media broadcasts, and door-to-door notification conducted by local law enforcement or U.S. government representatives. When recommendations of civilian officials cannot be followed, the civilian officials will be so advised and informed of alternative actions to mitigate their concerns. Now, I hope everybody's paying attention to that last sentence there. Now, if I was a mayor and had a problem with the military, I didn't want them to do anything. That they couldn't operate in this area, or they couldn't do this, or whatever it is. The civilian officials will be so advised and informed of alternative actions to mitigate their concerns, meaning the military don't have to follow their guidance. And remember that in that briefing with Thomas Meade, the mayor asked him, "Who's in charge, us or you?" And Thomas Meade says, "You guys are, because we're here under your invitation." Well, according to this right here, if there's a problem, the civilian officials will be so advised and informed of alternative actions to mitigate their concerns. This is very important. So Thomas Meade was not telling the full truth, in my opinion. And this goes on to different, who's the different organizations, different commands, and who has to be notified when it starts happening. Here's the email addresses, and they're going to email this person right here, or this address right here, email address right here, and they have to type in all this information and start the training. I think that's all I have highlighted. But hopefully you will learn something about this video and about Jade Helm 15 from the Department of Defense, their own documents, realistic military training. And if you have any questions, just go ahead and, I know there's a long video. I didn't mean it to be, but it's a lot of information. I want to get it all in there. Realistic military training, RMT, off federal real property. There's my email address, and if you have any questions, you can go and email me. And if, be sure and subscribe to my channel, American Contractor. If you have any, questions, if you have any comments, please list them. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Please share this. This gives up a lot of information. I will have the document in the description so you can look at it. And thank you for watching.